Miami has won 3 in a row. We'll give you our takeaways from Saturday's win over Portland. Plus, the vibes in the locker room are great, but have Heat players turned on Jimmy Butler? We'll answer that and more on today's episode of Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat, however you might be tuning in on YouTube or your favorite podcast app. Thanks so much for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. I'm Wes Goldberg here with David Ramil. Both of us are credentialed Heat media members who cover this team every day. In today's episode, sponsored by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Have a great show for you today. Jimmy Butler is losing leverage, and Tyler Herro says the Heat are only worried about the guys in the locker room right now. But first, former NBA players, David, are turning on Jimmy Butler. Here's what Tony Allen told Kevin Garnett on his podcast over the weekend. Quote, "For a guy that played 75% during the regular season, how are you going to ask for max money when you only want to play one part of the season?" End quote. Tim Hardaway Sr. on Sirius XM also over the weekend says, "This boat is going to sail on top of the water as long as Pat Riley is there. Jimmy Butler is trying to sink that ship. That ship is not going to sink. I'm all with Pat Riley. You're under contract. You play up under this contract. It's all about authority saying no to somebody, and these guys can't take rejection, and that is what it's all about." End quote. David, pretty surprising that you would hear former NBA players, and NBA players, you know, it's a club, right? Former NBA players tend to defend the NBA players, right? It's management versus the workforce. It's labor versus management, and labor tends to rally together and defend labor. And in both of these circumstances, Tim Hardaway maybe more blatantly, but Tony Allen essentially saying the same thing. Hey, Jimmy, you're not even playing up to your contract right now. How dare you? How dare you ask for another max contract? And again, while I understand the sentiment behind it, what is surprising to me is you see now former players defending management and not the star player currently.
Yeah, that is really surprising. I mean, you mentioned it, and it's an extreme brotherhood. There's sense of close-knit fraternity and the protecting of one another and looking out for each other's best interests runs through and through from generation to generation of NBA player. And so I can't recall hearing something like this where they're questioning a player and the reasons why they should or shouldn't get paid. I'm sure it's happened, and maybe it's just slipped my mind, but it's a little surprising. Tony Allen, to his point, I get that perspective. Like, as a former player, especially one known for the kind of grit and defensive tenacity that he displayed on the court, his thing was all about exceeding expectations, work ethic, etc. And a guy like Jimmy Butler, who I think the reputation is probably well earned at this point, that maybe he's coasting through the regular season and then kind of turns it up a notch at the playoffs. I think that kind of reputation is something that a player like Tony Allen would go, well, that's not fair. It's not fair that he should be recognized as a top 15-ish 20 player in the NBA just when he decides to turn it on in the playoffs. You know, I think it's kind of overstating things a lot. I think, one, he's not as great as we make it seem in the playoffs because he's also really good in the regular season as well. So it's just something that I understand the availability, though, that from that perspective, it's interesting that to hear a player like Allen criticizing Jimmy and questioning why he deserves a max contract. But Hardaway's comments, those are a little bit more. I think they're a little bit more
Fiery.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, just to say, you're under contract. Like, I don't think most players care about that. I don't think any players are saying, injuries happen and they understand when players are, but I think the understanding is also from Hardaway that maybe Jimmy hasn't been injured and missed some games. And I think he added some comment as well, some nuance. They're saying that Jimmy missed the Orlando game because he was out at Prime 112 or something to that effect. So there's a lot of shade being thrown at Jimmy here. And I get it from Hardaway's perspective. Like, he's appreciated by Pat Riley in the front office. He's a part of that. He's had his jersey retired. He's kind of got to stand up for the team a little bit more. But I think he's also seeing this almost as an opportunity for a personal attack on Jimmy, and recognizing what he says also is true. Like, Pat Riley is what defines this team. He's been with this team since 1995. Players come and go, but Pat Riley and the structure that he's implemented is the one mainstay of this organization for the past 29 years. And so I think that's just the tough pill to swallow, but I think it's also the reality.
In general, I think, like I said, when we talk about labor versus management,
sure.
If you just think about a normal workplace, right? And this is not quite an exact metaphor, but stay with me here. But like, if you just think about a regular workplace and you're pulling your weight and somebody else isn't, and that other person is asking for more money and more credit or whatever it might be, then all of a sudden labor versus management, that goes out the window, right? That's like the group project and you're carrying all the weight and we get an A on the group project, and the guy who was sleeping during the meetings also gets an A on the group project. Like, there's no appreciation for that guy. That guy's out of the brotherhood at that point. And so why I say it wasn't an exact metaphor is because Tony Allen and Tim Hardaway obviously aren't playing with Jimmy Butler. They're not in this locker room. But in terms of that brotherhood, you nailed it. When you said Tony Allen is a guy who he got every bit of juice out of the lemon of his career, right? Like, that guy really, he made the most out of his career. And Jimmy Butler, for the most part, like, that is sort of the brand he's created around himself, that he's a self-made superstar who worked himself through the fire to become the guy that he is. And I think that's true. But then there's also that part of these last couple of years where he has coasted. I don't like, this is not an allegation. This is a fact. And when you even go back to what Pat Riley was upset with Jimmy Butler coming out of last season too, it wasn't just the fact that he got hurt in the play-in tournament, that he, was unfortunately not available for the playoffs. It's that the guy was available for 60 games last regular season in body, and then maybe in mind and spirit was only available for about half of those. And that's the reason why Miami was playing during that week of the play-in tournament in the first place, and Jimmy Butler ultimately had Kelly Oubre fall on his knee. So when you kind of go to that, I don't think there was love lost for players like Tim Hardaway, who would love to have made $52 million in one season for his career, right? Because all these these former players look at the contracts that they make now, and when Tim Hardaway says, hey, you're under contract, I don't think that most former players are against players trying to get the next big contract. But when you actively quit on your team, which is what I think a lot of players see what Jimmy Butler did when he lit up the organization during that press conference, after that Pelicans game or after the Pacers game, when they see that, when they view you as having quit on your team while also making $50 million, I think that's when they lose their patience.
Yeah. You've got your money. You've made your money. This is a big contract. You play it out. Like, to say, look, you're worrying about something, especially when, and I think from a player's perspective, it's like you're worried about getting that extension, but you have the opportunity to opt in to $52 million. That's like more than I made over the course of 3 seasons while I was in the NBA. Like, you're so I think that's something that's
Tim Hardaway actually mentioned that. Sorry to cut you off, but like, just to help, he goes, we may see where all the chips may fall, but you can opt into $52 million next year, and then you're not going to opt into it, which is mind-boggling to me. How are you going to opt out of $52 million? He literally said that.
Okay. So there you go.
To your point. Yeah.
Yeah. And Hardaway also went in on defending Riley and talking about the grievance being filed by the Players Association, that he knows Riles has got a 10-page letter that he's going to give to show why he suspended him, et cetera, like that. So I mean, I don't know if it kind of shows
and video clips.
Direct, I don't know.
Him just standing in the corner, I guess, for 2 straight nights.
Is that direct intel? Is that insinuation? Is that something that he's guessing at? It's just interesting
like
how.
intel.
Like, who's talking to Tim at this point, being like, "Oh no, we're totally
right?
Thank you.
It would have to be a pick and roll partner, baby."
Absolutely. I don't even consider that, but yeah, you're absolutely right. He's like, so what's going on with this Jimmy thing? And then I was like, oh man, we got him. Don't worry about it. He's not gonna get out of this suspension. You're not getting paid for that. And
it's fascinating to see these players turn against a star like Jimmy. Like, you just wouldn't see this I don't know what other stars you wouldn't see former stars turn on LeBron or Steph or Kevin Durant even. Like you see, and like people might, it's Charles Barkley and Shaq, like they're on a TV show. It's a little bit different than just sort of going on a guest spot on a podcast. It's not even your own podcast, right? Even like Kevin Garnett or Paul Pierce, who have this podcast together, going after Heat players or Heat culture, like that's part of the shtick of having a show. But for these players to just come on as guests, that to me is different than like somebody like Charles Barkley kind of attacking a player, because they've got a show. They're in an entertainment world. It's a different kind of space than just a former player, part of that brotherhood, to just kind of go out of their way, in other words, to take a shot at a guy.
But they're confirming also what we've long said, that the main reason for this, as much as there might be an actual gripe or grievance in terms of what Riley said and feeling like he's lost favor with the organization, not feeling as appreciated as he wants to be, it's all basically about money, at least from Charles Barkley's perspective. And that's something that we've kind of said as well. And that's the majority. Like maybe 10% of what he's upset or wants to trade is because his feelings are hurt.
Well, what did he tell somebody at the big face?
Oh yeah.
Said
yeah, I'm not inferring that. That's are you reading into that? Like for those who haven't seen it on social media, it's been clipped by every aggregation site possible. But basically, he's there at Big Face Coffee. He's standing next to a barista. He says, "Oh, you're a really good barista," or something to that effect. He's like, "That's what good bosses do. They compliment you, not tear you down." And then he kind of looks at the camera.
Come on,
and,
that's 100% directed at Pat.
But maybe it's directed at Spo, not necessarily
Spo. No, I think
it's
Pat. Well, he said, "That's a direct. Keep your mouth shut." That's the whole thing.
Maybe.
I think.
Maybe. Maybe. I don't. It could be Spo. It could be Pat. Either way, it doesn't matter. I mean, I don't know that they see Spo as a boss anyway. But yeah, that's the whole thing too. It's like, is Pat really a boss? Like, is there a boss in the Heat organization?
He's the CEO, and Eric Spoelstra, for lack of a better term, is sort of middle management.
Nice.
He's your direct report. Pat Riley's the guy with the corner office, so you got to make an appointment with his. Yeah, you got to ask the assistant for an appointment. Jimmy Butler may have lost an important bit of leverage when it comes to getting his max contract. We're going to talk about that next year on Locked On Heat.
Today's episode is brought to you by Ultimate College Basketball HC. I want to take a moment to introduce you to the brand new mobile game that everyone's really excited about. That's Ultimate College Basketball HC. If you ever dreamed of being a college basketball head coach, well, this is your chance to step into those shoes. Yeah, you could be a player, but what about somebody who defines the organization, defines the school program for years to come? And Ultimate College Basketball HC, you control every detail of the program, from recruiting players to hiring coaching staff to overseeing training camps, handling NIL deals, and managing scholarships. It's all in your hands. When it comes to game time, you get to draw up offensive plays and set your strategy. The way you play won't just affect the current season, it'll shape the future of your school's basketball program. It's a game that lets you feel the full weight of what it means to be a head coach and lead your team to glory. So here's a special offer for Locked On NBA listeners. Use the promo code LOCKEDONCBB, all caps, inside the game store, and you get a free boost for your program. It's a perfect way to kickstart your coaching career. Download Ultimate College Basketball HC by visiting ultimate-cbb.com or look it up on the App Store. That's Ultimate College Basketball HC. Begin your coaching legacy today. Today's episode is also brought to you by Game Time. Who doesn't love going to live events, whether it's sports, music, theater, or comedy? So many great memories you can make by attending concerts or your favorite shows. The energy and excitement is unforgettable. And now Game Time makes it even easier for you to get tickets for your favorite events with their new feature, Game Time Picks. The feature filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great sites, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. I know what that's like. You just want to get tickets. You want to be making an impulse sometimes. You don't want to deal with that of just like waiting and trying to find the right price. No. Game Time has you covered. Their apps, all in pricing, shows you the total cost right up front. No surprise fees at checkout, so you know you're getting the best deal possible. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA. You get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, but create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA. You get $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. We'll be right back.
Thanks again for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Your favorite NBA team has a free daily newsletter introducing the Locked On Heat newsletter, one stop for ultimate Heat and league coverage with local analysis and amazing writing from Katie Heindel, Mike Shearer, and Locked On fantasy basketball tips from Josh Lloyd. Sign up for free now at lockedondaily.com. According to Mark Stein in his Sunday newsletter, the Brooklyn Nets don't have plans to sign Jimmy Butler or any other superstar for that matter in free agency this summer. This is what he says, quote, Butler needn't expect the Nets to be a suitor for his services if he goes through with plans to bypass his $52.4 million player option with Miami for next season to become a free agent. League sources reiterated to the Stein line this week that the Nets have no plans to pursue Butler in free agency, end quote. Not at all surprising necessarily, David, but now that we have confirmation of what we had expected, why would the Brooklyn Nets in the midst of a rebuild sign a 35 going on 36-year-old Jimmy Butler to a max contract? Never made sense.
Right.
But this was sort of central in Jimmy Butler's leverage play is trade me because I can opt out and you can lose me for nothing. And I'm going to go sign that max contract somewhere else. And the Brooklyn Nets were really the only team that could easily create max cap space. I think some of this is a little... There's other teams that can get close to max caps, like the Houston Rockets. Sure. If they waive Fred VanVleet's final year on a team option, they can create basically almost max cap space. Maybe another move here or there, and they can basically create that. So there's other teams with a lot of cap space that Jimmy Butler can walk into, even if it's not the max. But in terms of finding that max contract as just a free agent, that doesn't seem to be there anymore. And so if you're Jimmy Butler, and not only are you trying to create leverage over the Miami Heat, but potentially over other teams that might trade for you, if it's not the Phoenix Suns, right? If the Memphis Grizzlies, for instance, say, you know what? You're going to come here. We're not worried about you walking away and finding a max contract anywhere else, even though you've basically put it out to the media that you don't want to play for us. We could still offer you that max extension. We think you're going to take it no matter what, even if you don't want to be in Memphis, because we're the only team that can give you that much money because Brooklyn's not going to give it to you in free agency and nobody else is. So I think all in all, this does just hurt Jimmy's leverage play a little bit here.
How soon before he fires Bernie Lee? Is that the next step? Like, I can't speak to the closeness of that relationship, but we've seen the beginnings, the first steps of what this path was going to look like last summer when Philadelphia said, we don't care how much Joel Embiid likes you. We don't care how much he wants to play with you or what he thinks of you. We're going to take that money that we have. We'd rather spend it on Paul George. And I can understand from a fit perspective, although Clippers fans were saying, okay, good luck with all that. And they were happy to see him go. And it hasn't really paid off. And I don't think it actually will either. But as far as what Jimmy's able to command out there, there's a limited market. There always was going to be that. And I don't know where that's coming from, whether it's Bernie or Jimmy or just a lack of perspective from either one of them. There seems to be a disconnect and a failure to understand and read the room correctly. Like, there is just no place for him to go right now. And so I don't know if they're looking at it and regretting that it's gone down this path, that it's blown up the way it has. Jimmy doesn't strike me as being a person who has that kind of guilt or feelings like, I could have done this better. He blew up Minnesota. He didn't care. He blew up his way out of Philadelphia. He didn't care. That's fine. Like, he doesn't mind leaving a few bodies in his tracks, and that's fine. I just don't know if as long as it works out. And I just don't know that it's going to work out now. You're exactly right. Like, what's the next step for him? Like, he's not going to get that big deal unless he forces Phoenix or somehow gets Phoenix to trade Bradley Beal somewhere. And that seems like an impossibility, at least in the short term. So I don't know what other avenue there is for him to get the deal that he thinks he deserves. And the teams that can create that space, as you just said, aren't interested in it because he just doesn't fit that timeline. Like, it's nice that comment that was thrown in the ESPN report when he, officially made his trade demand, saying that he believes he can take any team and turn it into a contender. It's like, well, that's a great theory. I don't think it's
know it to be false.
Reality.
It is false, right? If he could take any team and turn it into a contender, why not do it with the team you're on now?
Because they're not paying him and not willing to pay him.
I suppose.
Well, why did he didn't do it over the last 5 years? I guess,
or even last year.
Did.
I think 2023 is one thing. They were in the finals, but was he hurt during the regular season?
Yes.
outside of 20 games, he was. In those 60 games, they were still basically a 500 team. And and look, he could say that and think that. Nobody in the league believes that Jimmy Butler could turn any team. He's not turning the Washington Wizards into a contender. Like, what does that even mean? Nobody's doing that, right? You could put Nikola Jokic or Giannis on the Wizards and they'd still be a 500 basketball team. Like, get out of here with that.
Yeah.
So, look, it has worked out for Jimmy Butler in the past. And that does not mean it's going to work out for Jimmy Butler in the future. He's 35 years old. He's going on 36. You've seen players age. If Jimmy Butler has already played on his last max contract at 35 years old, would that be at all surprising when given the history of professional sports, how these guys age? It would be more surprising if Jimmy Butler signed another max contract. That would be more surprising than if he were to sign something somewhat below that. You just saw DeMar DeRozan sign a deal of $25 million a year. And he's a guy that goes out there and plays every game that he can and has averaged 20 points per game for 12 straight years. I'm not telling you that DeMar DeRozan is better than Jimmy Butler. I'm not, by no stretch am I saying that. But you don't question his availability or his consistency. And I think if you're going to question Jimmy Butler for anything, it's his availability and it's his consistency. And you could talk about wanting to get paid for the playoffs and all these things, but that's past performance and you already got paid for that. Yeah. What a new team is going to want, and he had a cush deal in Miami. They were willing to deal with it for a couple of years, and they're not willing to deal with it anymore. They're not going to pay him another contract to deal with that again. No. And if you're another team, you don't want to pay him $500,000 a game for him to show up and stand in the corner. No owner is going to want to do that except for Matt Ishbia and the Phoenix Suns, apparently. So, and that's just a desperation Hail Mary heave for them to kind of hold on to this messed up sort of thing that they've created over there. And so if that doesn't happen, and the reporting is that there's been no movement on finding another team for Bradley Beal, and the Heat aren't going to take on Bradley Beal. So if this isn't going to happen, then I don't know what's going to happen. And that's why I say, like, is the reporting that there's no offers that the Heat like, how accurate is that? Because if there's another deal that's not Bradley Beal that's out there from Jimmy Butler, you might have to take that. Or is there just no deals out there for Jimmy Butler? And I tend to think it might be more of that than the latter or than the former. And because you can't risk him opting into $52 million because you're going to have a hard time trading him then also. If you have a hard time trading him now, you're going to have a harder time trading him when he's making $2 million more and he's older and more disgruntled and rusty probably. That's the part that I don't understand. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, he's losing leverage here.
When the teams that have been reportedly told not to trade for him, is Miami obligated to consider that? Or is it just limit the number of willing trade partners because Milwaukee and or Memphis aren't going to try and acquire a player like Jimmy because they're going to give up assets in order to get Jimmy. And then the reality is that at least they think that Jimmy might not re-sign there. But again, if we're talking about it from that perspective, why wouldn't Memphis take that chance? Like, I know that Toronto, I don't remember the exact particulars of Kawhi's situation. Did he have an option when he was traded to Toronto?
No, it was I think it was just the one. I think it was the final year. Yeah, it was just the final year of his contract.
Okay. So for Memphis, it's like, we don't care. You're not going to get the deal you want anywhere else. So we'll try and trade for you now, and you play your heart out this year, and then we'll see what happens over the offseason. And if not, you opt in, then we'll be happy to have you opt in next year as well.
I would bet at this point, Jimmy opts in. Even though everything is that he's opting out, and that's all leverage. I would bet at this point he's opting in. That's a lot of money to say no to, $52.4 million. And it could take you 2 years to make up that money if you were to test free agency. Even if it's a better location, whatever, you could talk yourself into whatever way if you're a fan. Clearly, Jimmy Butler is all about the money right now. And if there's a better 3-year deal out there, like what, he's going to play until 39 years old to make the money back that he could just make in 1 year? Like, that does. How does that make any sense? To me. So it wouldn't surprise me whatever happens.
Right? Because of the over 38 rule. Like, right? Isn't he limited by that? He can only sign a 2-year extension at this point because he would be over 38. And I think
agent, he can, but as a free agent, he can sign whatever. So if he opts out, he could sign a 3-4 year deal. That's only, the over 38 rule only applies to extensions, which is why he's capped at a 2-year, $113 million max. With Miami, it would be a 2-year, $111 million max with another team. But this hurts the leverage overall. To answer your question, if I'm Memphis, am I trading 4 role players now? Like 4 guys who are in my rotation for Jimmy? I don't know. Like, I think that's a fair question. He's making $50 million now. You're going to have to stack a lot of salary to get there. And you have to weigh, okay, do we want this headache? Do we want this, or rather, do we want this question mark on our team? Or would we rather just sort of roll with what we got and wait for the next big thing to happen? I think it's a fair question. But if you're Miami now too, what Jimmy Butler has expressed, whatever offers are out there, it's going to be the bare minimum. It's going to be, I don't see a way where Miami gets anything back that they would actually want. Even if De'Aaron Fox were to ask out of Sacramento, who's won 7 games in a row, by the way, why would they want Jimmy Butler? Like, Jimmy Butler's going to say no to Memphis, no to Milwaukee, and be like, Sacramento, that's where I want to play? No. Like, they'll be like, no, we'll acquire Jimmy Butler, and we'll see if we can convince De'Aaron Fox to stay. Here's Kevin Huerter and Trey Lyles, something like that, and some other stuff. But yeah, it's a tough conversation with everybody involved. Coming up, we look ahead to Monday night's game against the Clippers, who haven't played since Wednesday because of these LA fires. The Heat, meanwhile, have won 3 straight games. One star credits the vibes in the locker room for the winning streak. We'll talk about if they can keep the good vibes going Monday night after this.
Today's episode is brought to you by Open Phone. Running a small business means you're wearing a lot of hats. Your personal phone becomes your business phone. And before you know it, you're juggling customer calls day and night. As your team grows, it becomes impossible to manage everything with just your personal number. But that's where Open Phone comes in. It's the #1 business phone system designed to help you keep your work and personal life separate. For just $15 a month, the cost of a few cups of coffee, you get complete transparency and visibility into everything happening with your business phone number. Open Phone works through an app on your phone or computer and integrates with tools like HubSpot and hundreds of others. It also uses AI-powered call transcripts and summaries, so you'll have a rundown of your calls and action items the second you hang up. And if you miss a call, no problem. Automated messages are sent directly to your customer, ensuring you never miss an opportunity to engage. Right now, Open Phone is offering 20% off your first 6 months when you go to openphone.com/LockedOnNBA. That's OPENPHONE.com/LockedOnNBA. You get 20% off for 6 months. Openphone.com/LockedOnNBA. And if you have existing numbers with another service, Open Phone will port them over at no extra charge. We'll be right back.
Thanks again for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. The best way to support the show is to subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on your favorite podcast app. The Heat beat the Blazers on Saturday night, David. We got 10 cookies to hand out. Who's got their hand in the cookie jar? Old cookies.
Yeah, still good, though. Still good. 5 credit cookies go to Tyler Herro. He was electric. He led the team with 32 points, but also chipped in 5 rebounds, 5 assists. Big night for him. Really, really solid outing. So I think he did a fine job of reminding those Trailblazer fans that maybe he just might be a little bit better than some of the players already in the roster. And maybe they missed up a little bit by not acquiring
maybe
him
a little
last
bit
summer when they had the chance.
There it
maybe
is, Cronin.
Just a little bit. All right. Anyway, Nikola Jovic, hey, another part of that trade that they would have acquired. He did pretty good also with 21 points, including 4 of 7 shooting from three-point range. He'd been in a little bit of a funk from the perimeter, but he got it going against the Blazers. Also wound up chipping in 8 rebounds, 5 assists, bringing the total package there. Great game from Nico. And then lastly,
how many cookies for Nico?
That was, let's see here. That was 3 for Nico, 5 for Tyler, and 2 for Haywood Highsmith, who went 4 of 5. And I really like that he was knocking down those shots. Not only was he playing great defense, but those 3-point shots were key moments throughout the game when Miami needed to keep a little bit of separation. He did a phenomenal job in his 37 minutes of play, continues to impress. I don't know what he's shooting lately, but it feels like 80% from 3-point range, because it just seems like every time he's got that ball in the corner, or even on the wing now, it's pure cash. So great, shout out to Hayward for being a valuable role player after being out of the rotation earlier in the season. We talked about Nico being out of the rotation. Hyman had struggled. Hayward was out as well. He's worked his way back and been really sensational.
He's been better this year than Caleb Martin was for the team last year.
Oh, Caleb was hurt and so undersized, but yes, absolutely. Yeah. I don't think there's any comparison. Like, you can make a comparison maybe to Caleb the previous year when he was really great playing out of position, but Caleb struggling through last year, that was It's hard to watch. It made his departure a lot easier. And I mean, I think that's why Miami was still willing to offer him a contract, thinking that maybe we can get him back and he'll be back to full strength after what we saw last year. But that's a whole other story. And unfortunately, that ship has sailed.
Haywood Highsmith, after the Blazers game, said, quote, "Everybody's buying in. The vibes are great. Everyone is locked in. The team chemistry off the court is amazing as well." A little punctuation there. He said that after the game, after Miami's third straight win. Tyler Herro also asked about this 3-game winning streak, says, quote, "Just rallying around each other, making it about the guys here now. Guys in the locker room. We've got enough. That's all that matters." End quote. Talked about Tim Hardaway, Tony Allen turning against a member of the Brotherhood, Jimmy Butler. His teammates, there is, according to, but just going by these quotes, you have to rally. You have to be there for the guys who are there, right? And I understand that's most of this. But when you talk about a guy quitting on the team, they feel that. They have to feel that. And I do think that part of this now, after getting your butt kicked to start this road trip, to then respond by winning 3 straight games.
Yeah.
I think they are, I think the Jimmy Butler thing is bulletin board material, and it's not the outside noise. It's Jimmy Butler's noise. That has supplied some these guys are prideful. And if Jimmy Butler comes back, they'll welcome him and they'll say all the right things, right? Of course. But these guys are also prideful. And they don't want to say, just because this guy isn't here, now we're a bad basketball team. They don't want that. They're prideful. They want to come out and they want to show, hey, we don't need this guy. And by these quotes, I think that's the bulletin board material that's motivating them right now on this trip.
I think so. I mean, they could be a Jaime Jaquez free throw against the Sacramento Kings away from a 4-0 start here. And we talked about getting away from Miami, getting away from those vibes and everything else, like having to clear your head, the kind of solidarity that's built by being away and being just you. It's 15 versus everybody else in that city, wherever you're traveling to. And so I think they've certainly embraced that and they're kind of leaning into it. I don't know. I can't believe that they would have turned on Jimmy so overtly, but it kind of just feels like at the same time where, and to your point, and you did say this, so I believe that you're probably right. They probably will welcome Jimmy back, although I would sense that there might be some tension between Bam and Jimmy, Tyler and Jimmy, just because of, well, we can do things a little differently, and we're committed. We're playing 100%. If you're not going to give your 100%, well, maybe that's a problem for us, and I think that's where the stress might potentially lie. But as far as the tension in the locker room or anything else like that, I don't know. Maybe that might be a little bit overblown. I like the way, though, to spin it in a positive way, that they really are just focusing on the guys that are currently on the team. You sense a little bit of a not just positivity, but almost, and maybe this is just my own perception, a youthful vibe, like a carefree kind of approach to the game. You've got the two-way guys contributing. You've got all these young drafted players that the team has selected. Like Bam, like Kevin Love isn't really visible anymore. Like Duncan is the old head, other than Alec Burks. But again, Alec Burks is a quiet shadow moving around there. You don't really see him so much. But other than that, it's just kind of these young guys on the roster, kind of like hyping each other up. You see Kashad Johnson, Josh Christopher, all these guys kind of whooping it up on the sidelines, and it just brings a weird, not a weird, a different kind of vibrancy to this team than what we've seen in the past few years.
When Jimmy's engaged and he's caring and he's motivated, there's no question this team is better, and this team can have a lot of fun. We've seen it even this season.
Yes.
But when he's standing in the corner like he did the last week before his suspension, nobody's enjoying that, including Jimmy. This is like Jimmy Butler essentially quit on the team in a press conference. If there's not tension, it would be weird. Of course there's tension. Of course there's rancor. Of course there's all of this. Like, how would you not feel that? Like animosity even. I mean, we could use strong words here if we want. This guy told a room full of reporters, I don't think I can find joy on the court here, and what we're doing isn't working. And everybody's looking around, and we're like, and everybody else is like, it's working for us. And we're not just standing. Yeah, and it's not, and we're not just standing in the corner. Why wouldn't they feel a certain way about it? So yeah, this is a distraction, and that's why he was suspended. It's because he was a distraction. So the fact that they are rallying, and we said this before, this road trip could not come at a better time for this team, especially a 6-game trip where they were going to be gone for 2 weeks. Like, it could not have come at a better time. And it sounds like they are bonding and kind of rallying around sort of the circumstance that they find themselves in. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. We'll be back Monday night with a reaction or post-game reaction to Heat Clippers. But for now, like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on your favorite podcast app.